guys, welcome to my videos where I use chocophobia to, exposure therapy to help deal with my chocophobia. So in my car, I'm going over to the A&W. I'm going to get poutine, which is what I eat. This is what I decided to eat yesterday. That's not what I necessarily want to talk about now, though. I want to talk about psychology and most importantly, how to talk to people who are like your family about, for example, like taking psychology seriously. But what do I mean? What I mean is, let's say you have someone in your life who doesn't think that, and this is common among older people, who doesn't think that psychology is useful. That it's like they just want, like the therapists just want your money, and it's a con. And as I am a little on that side, I don't believe all therapists want your money, and I don't believe it's all a con. And that's where these other people get, hiccup. They throw out the whole for the part. A lot of them actually, a lot of these therapists are genuinely people who have survived mental illnesses and want to help other people. And so they're not making this up. They're probably on the throes of suicide or whatever, and then they decided, I want to get better. They perhaps had someone in their life that helped them get better, like a counselor, and they wanted to, move that forward, pay that forward and become a counselor themselves. And then there's people who academically, just like you go to school to be like an astronaut, some of it is like you're going to make hella money because you're a psychologist, a psychiatrist. You make money from that profession as a doctor. A lot of it, though, is just their interest and curiosity in the human mind. That's not necessarily bad, right? That's not necessarily hateful or harmful. Or speaking to the larger issue, it's not necessarily something that needs to be stigmatized. And tips for talking to people who don't believe in psychology. Number one, I gotta understand that these people come from an older generation, and their motto, their understanding of psychological problems is basically like you get through it, like you just, you know what I mean? Like you just, I don't know, my dad said it's all about will, My mom, she's like, those type of people, we would just put them away, right? It's almost like, you're not that crazy. You may have mental health issues and challenges and struggle, whatever, suicidal thoughts, chocophobia, social anxiety. You don't necessarily need to be committed. And that's the attitude a lot of these older people have. And I don't believe that's right, and that's those videos. So how do you talk to someone like that? I think the first thing is just being upfront and honest with them, really. Telling them, not telling yourself, okay, detach your anxiety and your exposure therapy or whatever you're doing from your conversations with people who you want to kind of help understand better psychology so you can break the stigma. You first be honest and frank. You say, instead of commenting on their behavior. For example, I'll give you an example. My dad came, and the way he is, his whole attitude, it comes across to me, not to others, it comes across to me as really all right, I've got everything set, and I'm scared to talk about negative things when I'm feeling good, because it might lead to that becoming true. I'll give you an example that stayed with me as well. Not so much with my dad, stayed with me. I remember when I was doing my exposure therapy, I still continue to do them. I think it was 4 or 5 months in, I would actually say the thought, say it, normalize it. I'm gonna choke on this piece of chicken, or I'm gonna choke on these fries. I'm gonna choke and die, right? Just saying those thoughts before an exposure, I got this feeling that I wasn't supposed to say it. And that comes from your culture and your family and your upbringing and your understanding of what you think is acceptable to, for example, to say. Right? Some religions say certain things before they do eating. For me, though, I would look at it more as just as an action, right? I would look at it I'm not supposed to say these things because then they might become true. And that's not necessarily true. I learned this a couple days ago. Thinking something doesn't make it true. Let's say there was some Siberian rail car disaster that, in Siberia, and you're like, oh man, I caused it. I was in some way I had to park the plane in it. When you really get back down to it, when you really look at it when you have a friend or significant other and you look them in the eyes and you get this feeling like, yeah, I really believe this happened, you'll understand eventually that you're not responsible for something that happened in Siberia, like a train crash. You're not responsible. You weren't the conductor. You gotta look at things. We do this all the time. You gotta look at things just like how we look at things, like you would say when you're learning about something new. You would give it a fair shake, right? Most things you would give a fair shake. I mean, I would like to think you're mostly objective about lots of things, right? So we're objective. We were trained to be objective when we go to school and university. We're all trained to be objective learners, creative thinkers, all that stuff. So the question becomes, why do we stop when we're dealing with things like choking phobia or social anxiety or, whatever, asking your boss for a raise? Why do we always think in black and white and yes or no and good or bad and there's no gradations, and we don't actually do the same thing that we do when we were, for example, thinking about things that, we're interested in, that we learned about and are creative about? And that's the struggle with therapy. That's the struggle with any sort of therapy that you're undertaking. You have to get away from the way you were thinking, which is good or bad, choke or not choke, gay, straight, Muslim, non-Muslim, and you gotta be able to just tolerate doubt. You gotta be able to just be here. It's called being mindful. You're just here. The most important thing for you is just be here. Be comfortable with how your breath feels in your body. Feel comfortable with the way you're speaking, the way you're acting, the way you're breathing, the way you're thinking, what you're doing. Make it so that that is the most important thing you're doing. Just simply what you're doing. So then you will gain mastery over not only automatic, also unautomatic sort of behaviors. For example, unautomatic behaviors would be like, for example, how you eat with the swallowing mechanism. And automatic behaviors would be just wanting to. And unautomatic behaviors would be forcing yourself to learn more about psychology because you're in this orbit of doing exposure therapy. So that's tip number one. Be honest and frank with the people who you're trying to convince them that they have that mental illnesses are real and need to be destigmatized. Tip number two is to empathize with the people you're talking to, because as I said, they're not going to understand everything about psychology. You need to not judge them. You need to, for example, be honest and frank with them. Like, a lot of them believe that psychology is a form of exorcism. I read this in I think it was an Islam article, I forget, online, where it was like tackling traditional cultures' ideas of psychology and how to deal with them. A lot of them basically thought that going to a therapist, locking the door behind him and talking to him for an hour is like a sort of exorcism. So that's something that I've never really heard of before. Like, I know what exorcism is, and I know what therapy is, and I never thought that I'd confuse the two. For me, it doesn't seem like it's true. Like, I've had, in Islam, it's very common to get exorcisms. It's just part of, like, being a good person. So I've gotten, like, 2 or 3 when I was a Muslim. And then therapy, I've had many therapists. And so I just don't understand. Like, you gotta really, like, wrap your head around. I think it has to do with the fact that you're allowed to think whatever you want. You're allowed to say whatever you want. I guess you're allowed to, like, express yourself whatever you want. Like, there's people, like, that may have something wrong with them in terms of, like, spiritually. I'm not entirely sure if I'm 100% believe in that. I know 99% of those exorcisms are more than likely mental illnesses. There's that 1% though that makes you think. Not getting too off topic, I'm just saying that in terms of, like, exorcisms, it's important to look at it from their point of view, what they think an exorcism is. And kind of just say, no, therapy isn't really an exorcism. It's more of just you sitting down and talking with someone and telling them your problems and how you think and what you want to do to get better from them. It has really nothing to do with like casting evil out of you. See how that becomes a stigma? Just talking about mental illnesses, it's not how you're evil now. Alright, give me a couple minutes. Actually, you know what? I'm going to end it here because it's been good enough. I may make a part 2. Remember, guys, stay with it. I'm going to close it right now.